we got a big dictionary to go along with it, right? To increase our vocabulary. Any other things? Do you like it or you don't like it?
I like it.
You like it? Those who know we're reading a book in this class. And I said how how capitalism has developed in Black America. So for those of you who have read the book, how did you find it okay? No? You haven't read it, so you can't make any comments, criticism.
Right.
Next week, we ought to be able to get some comments, criticism. Right? Anyway, it deals with the introduction deals with a basic synopsis of the development of the economic system upon which America, and matter of fact, the Western world is based, and what it has in fact done to Black people as in its development. It's important that you look at that and see some of the basic foundations of this development, economic development, because as we say, tying events to the current reality, you see on page 1 of the Houston Chronicle today, Gorbachev arrives at this historic talk. And you know what's happening here? There's another economic summit. Y'all remember there was an economic summit in Houston last year, and we made comment then last year when it was holding a discussion that there were no Black folks at that particular summit held in Houston, Texas, down at Rice University. And then some Black folks tried to, want to know if Bush and them would sanction, interested in the question, would sanction an economic conference or hold one with smaller countries or undeveloped countries and non-industrial countries, third world countries, all of the different indications that say non-white. And they said, no, we ain't meeting with them. We got a meeting and we know what we're meeting about. Interesting enough, Bush, prior to this meeting, dealt with this allied or this alliance, the allied forces that bombed Iraq in terms of dealing with these nations that control the petroleum. And next thing you know, they're having a big conference. And at this conference, no Black people, no Arab people, interested enough, right? Just white folks. White folks from, there's Dutch there, Germans, Italians, French, British, and of course, Mr. Bush, our beloved president. And they're holding a conference, an economic conference, and now they're bringing in Gorbachev, which comes also from bringing in some more white folks. Now, the whole question that we have to kind of deal with is, they deal with this as preparing for this new century, the new American century, new world order. What, in fact, is going to happen with Black people? Now, you remember we talked about a couple weeks ago when they first had this idea of establishing a new world. That new world took place where? Say, for instance, a couple weeks ago, America celebrated its birthday in terms of independence. Remember in 1776, the white folks over here declared their independence from Great Britain. And the idea was that they were developing this alliance of people who were thrown off the shackles of the oppression of the king and were establishing this union that was based upon individual rights, the rights of the individual, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, all that kind of stuff. And it was the development of this new world order, and gradually as it developed, first based upon a grand culture, which primarily benefited from who? Benefited from who?
Slaves.
From, not slaves, but Black people, who became slaves. We kind of got to deal with that in our minds in terms of not equating being Black with being a slave in terms of its genetic order. We do make that mistake. Remember, even when Black folks were quote unquote free, they were still ex-slaves. Never people. Y'all with? Because we got to get in terms of white man's definition. We always define the Black people as slaves. And so even when we went off on the plantation, we didn't leave the plantation. We had this thing that said we were free. We went from that state to sharecropping and to basically massive control of Black people. But in white folks' mind, and even in our same mind, like some of y'all even, when you say, my great-great-grandmama was a slave, you say that sometimes as if, that by nature, she's a slave. It's better to say enslaved. Now, we can say that when you're enslaved, you develop a slave mind, but you got to be conscious of it. In 1776, when the white man declared in America declared his independence from Great Britain, black people were still enslaved, and groups of people came together and held a conference to determine what would be the plight of what was happening to these people in America. Y'all, any of y'all read Time magazine? Who are we? On the cover, they're showing people. You remember this little spirit of America? White man in the middle beating the drum. Now they got an Indian on the side playing a flute, and the sister on the side playing a Congo drum. They didn't let us play Congo drums on the plantation. But it's interesting that the spirit of America has two people, or represents two races of people. One that has massive oppression heaped upon it, and the other one had massive genocide reaped upon it, and it becomes the spirit of America. And the only benefactor is the white man. And that was something that happened in 1776. Now, in 1981, 1980, they held this economic conference. 1991, they hold this economic conference, and there's still no black people there. And what kind of decisions can we look forward to in terms of being made in relationship to black people? Now, there's a major crisis happening with black people in America. Everybody will agree. You know, AIDS is killing us. Y'all do realize that. I know some of y'all still don't have questions yet. You know, some of y'all still have some massive amnesia or some massive mental blocks in relationship to understanding that black people are in serious trouble in America. But black people are in very serious trouble in America. And we wonder that when these white folks are coming together holding these economic conferences, how do we fit in on the agenda, or should we even be on the agenda? Should we be concerned with being on the agenda? Our problem is we generally want to be on the agenda. We want someone to be representative there of us. But again, that may be us falling into the mindset of being dependent upon white people to do for us what we ought to do for ourselves again. But the other problem lies is that outside of what we may be doing here, and some black folks are doing in other little places, there ain't nobody sitting around trying to figure out what to do with black people. You know what I mean? Have any of you been to see Boys in the Hood? Not enough, y'all, so I can't tell y'all what happened in the movie. But I just said I wasn't gonna tell. I don't tell. But God, I can't say nothing about it. But I would caution you this. That's the only thing I say. Look in there and see if there's anything that faintly resembles program or answer. Excellent movie. I don't even know if you would call it a movie. More like psychodrama. You will see yourself. You will see your partners. You will see your neighbors. You will feel pain. You hear your brothers and sisters laughing in the show, and you want to get up and beat the hell out of somebody. It's a whole lot of stuff going to happen. But the thing is, you will see problem presented. Question will be, is there an answer? The idea is that it paints so clearly the reality of black people that when you look at all the problems that black people are having, you realize that our problem is we don't have an answer. And one of our other problems is that in not having an answer, our dependent mentality has created a situation for us that we then want the white man to come up with solutions for us. So when Gorbachev and Bush and the French and the Dutch and the people from Great Britain are sitting around having this great caucus, we can only sit here in anxious anticipation and hope and desire and pray that they come up with a solution for us as a people. But as you read through all the headlines, you see that everything is pointing to the fact that black people are on the way out. Talking to Bishop Olu today about she works with a counseling group that deals with substance abuse people. And she was dealing with the magnitude of the amount of people that actually come through there infected with AIDS. Which means, you know, the idea, they said there is no cure. And it's being heaped upon black people so that, you know, on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's just like she said they did a little survey and said, you know, how you got that commercial dealing with the pyramid of your sexual partners. Like, how many of you been with one person over the last year? You know, she said very few people raised their hand. How many been with 5? Few people raised their hand. But she said the surprising thing was to see when the woman said, how many of y'all been with 100 people within the last year, and a whole lot of hands went up in the room. Now, you think about it, it's like some of you can't even fathom the idea that somebody's had 100 sexual partners within the last year. And the sisters that are in there talking, they're saying, some of y'all reacting, but you don't realize that the person I had a relationship with probably is married to you. You understand? Which means then that you sleeping with the same people that the sister that slept with. Which means that opposite situation becomes more crucial. And some of y'all who still out thinking that you can play fancy pants and run around the streets has lost your mind. Because this thing is actually wiping us out. But again, this is problem. What's the solution? Drug epidemic in the black community leading to all of this promiscuous sexual behavior in association with people doing things for drugs. How many of y'all saw Jungle Fever? Yeah, okay, I can talk about that. Y'all remember the little girl running up? So, y'all, all of you culturally deprived people gonna have to start doing it. Because then y'all just stifle the development and the discussion of the rest of us. Y'all gonna have to do something a little bit more. But anyway, there's scenes about where a little sister runs up to a brother and say, I do this for you for $5. Now y'all can let your vivid imagination do whatever it is do. But the idea is that becomes more and more a reality in the black community. Which means that the reason that these people are going through this dehumanizing behavior is based upon the absence of a lack of capital to deal with the escape mechanism that the individual has chosen for themselves. Meaning, i.e., cocaine habits, crack habits, and what have you. So prostitution becomes a way of life for not only black women, but also black men. Because homosexuality is greater in the black community than you may think. Yay? Yay. Yay. Which means we go, and it ain't best upon brothers walking around with big wrists. Really? I mean, it's like a switch hitting situation. People hit you again. That's right, they batting on both sides of the plate. It's the idea that brothers are doing a lot of things. And just like it ain't only lead sisters to doing crazy, dehumanizing things, brothers will also do crazy, dehumanizing things. And why? Because they don't have that economic base to supply them with the things that they have chosen to use as an escape mechanism. Again, problem. What's the solution? A lot of you have been receiving pink slips. Remember now, Gorbachev and Bush been meeting on this now. A lot of y'all receiving pink slips because the corporation that you work for is closing down, structuring you out. Interesting thing, you think it's a black problem. However, you found yourself to be the only spook in the office. So now you have you getting laid off, but also 50 white people getting laid off at the same time. So you can't really cry, wonder why the Supreme Court and the rest of them say, we ain't listening to no niggas talking. It's because white people also say that we have economic problems. You watch all those little TV shows that you like Oprah and Geraldo and Sally Raphael and the rest of them, and the idea that you look up and you hear white people saying all kind of ignorant stuff, you say they don't understand what it's like to be black, which is true. But at the same time, they don't sit back and say, we can understand, you talking about we don't understand what it's like to be hungry, because white people do know what it's like to be hungry. Mm-hmm. And they don't like you blaming them for their particular problems. And so, quite naturally, they want to put people in office who are going to not be giving you all the benefits. Because when they look up and they see million-dollar niggas running up and down the basketball court, they get upset. When they look up and see Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby and Prince, all even though they love them, when they get to talk about how much money these niggas are making, they get upset. And at the same time, when they're not showing these elaborate black folks, this microcosmic, microscopic example of how black people exist, then they show you this other side of black people who are knocking people's doors down, who are slapping and raping white women and snatching purses. And then all of a sudden, here you come saying, we want some equal opportunity. They say, the hell with you and equal opportunity. Then you wonder what these people at this conference are going to be talking about. So you start thinking about the economic situation of black people in America, which is also going to be dealing with the working class of black people, which is chapter is addressing, which is primarily dealing with all y'all. We talked a couple weeks ago, I heard this, like we were discussing, I talked about orientation, that black people want to know, is it all right to be a capitalist? Well, first of all, a black working class person can't be talking about being a capitalist anyway. Because capitalist basically indicates that you are the captains of industry, that you control the means of production, that you operate, that you determine what will be made, what will be not made, and you operating a hot dog stand does not qualify you to be a captain of industry. Not unless you're controlling all of the hot dog production, and you got cows, and you got bread production, and you controlling wheat production, and you controlling the mustard seed, and you're dealing with the tomatoes that process to become ketchup, and you're dealing with the cucumber farms and everything else that's going to deal with the pickles. Then you just start maybe consider yourself to be a pseudo-capitalist. But at this point, when you just go down here and open up a stand down the corner, you can't consider yourself to be a capitalist. You just a brother who decided, or a sister who decided to go into business for yourself to exist in a capitalist system. Now, you're going to have to live in a capitalist system because that's the kind of system that exists. And you should. If you can open up a business and it can be productive, you ought to open up one and work for the benefit of providing for your family. Don't exploit your brothers and sisters, though, in the process. Because that's what destroys us. And then one, it becomes very difficult for a black business to operate that's exploiting black people anyway, because black people won't patronize and support you. All you got to do is come here one time, have one of those sisters working there with attitude, and all of a sudden you lose business. Isn't that true? We'll put up with stuff from the white man, but we don't take nothing off niggas. You know how you feel? We'll take stuff off the white girl, we report the sisters to the manager. Don't find no black hair in your food. White hair, you can live with that just a little bit. You understand the problem we're dealing with? So the idea is we have to look at what's happening with black people in terms of economic development. Last week, the NAACP was here meeting. How many of y'all went to some of the workshops? Interesting. Nobody went to the NAACP workshop, the largest black, colored, Negro operation in America, and nobody went? They had a meeting, a conference. How many millions of dollars did they spend? Anybody have any idea?
20.
In terms of a black organization coming to a city like Houston, Texas, and you know, I mean, the idea, anytime you have a conference like that, the largest black organization, they were staying where? Stouffer's. Who's that owned by? Maybe also be owned by
Japanese.
or maybe owned by. You know they owned by none of us, though.
Yeah, right.
And where were they eating?
Restaurant.
Did the concaves get full every day? Concaves is a black restaurant over on Alameda. Again, you're showing our culture.
4812.
Right. But were they there? No, but don't you think that economic development, Black Business Association, was on the agenda? I mean, don't you think black business, black entrepreneurs were there? Some of y'all went down there and had booths, black folks had some booths. But don't you think all that was on the agenda? Then how is it do we continue, and that's not a criticism, well, it is a criticism of NAACP, it's a criticism of all our black groups that have conferences. Generally, we end up feeding the white folks and maintaining their status and their power, even when we come together to discuss how to solve our problem or the problem facing black economic, and we don't spend major dollars in the black community. Y'all understand what I'm saying? I mean, you can think that maybe there were some black hotels to stay in, but most of y'all won't stay in them, and you can expect they would stay in them either. Because they also serve as crack houses and houses of prostitution. You can imagine that a couple people visited some of them while they were here, but they didn't necessarily want to stay there. That does happen also, y'all do know that. Convention is party time. Y'all been to convention. Some of y'all had your place you work for. When you go to convention, you know what that means. Half-hour meeting, let's get to the party. Leave husband or wife at home. Sorry, baby, they didn't give me but one ticket. But on that agenda was the issue of economic development. Also on that issue was the idea of the next Supreme Court justice. Clarence Thomas. Interesting question that I would like to pose to somebody in NAACP. They said, we don't like Clarence Thomas, but we give General Powell an award. Highest citizen award. And you thought, don't they work for the same person? Matter of fact, Clarence Thomas ain't even employed by Bush yet. But General Powell does. And how is it that you can't like him, and hit this man? He in charge of the man's army. Navy, Air Force, at least in theory. But they get one award and talk about the other. But that was on the agenda. A problem. Thurgood Marshall resigned from the Supreme Court. Why? In this Time magazine, it also addressed that. It said Thurgood Marshall had a quote where he was saying that power, not reason, is the currency of this court's decision making. Cast aside today are those condemned to face society's ultimate penalty. Tomorrow's victims may be minorities, women, or the indigent. Now he's saying now power, not reason, deals with this whole thing. And so he was saying that he's in a position where I ain't even spinning my wheels sitting here. Now that was a discussion. Bush says, let me find somebody to put in this position. They go out and find a brother. As soon as y'all find out he was married to a white woman, that intensified the problems that we would have with him. Some folks. Then you start thinking, what would he represent? What would he do? What could he do that Thurgood Marshall couldn't do? There's no way that, like say it couldn't be Thurgood Marshall. I think that Senator Washington was wrong, though, for dealing with making an example about wasn't worthy of shining a man's shoes, because black men have fed their family on shining people's shoes. And that's one of the professions we had. Now, I don't think you ought to use the things that black people have to do to survive as being something degrading. If shining shoes is the way that people make their living, then shine shoes. Matter of fact, I got a pair of shoes shine at the airport. Brother charged me $5. He shined my shoes in 10 minutes. That means in the process of an hour, he can shine 6 pairs of shoes at $30. How many of y'all make $30 an hour? Better get you a shoe shining kit. You understand? But I mean, the implication was this is a degrading job. He ain't wearing the shining man's shoes, which means he ain't wearing, you know what I mean? Why would one black man get up and talk about another black man like that? And talk about a black man who, to this point, so far, we don't know what he's done. And I've also heard people that would say that about Senator Washington. So I think brothers got to be kind of cautious in the way that, unless someone has demonstrated and gave evidence of being worse than the other, then I think we have to be cautious in terms of how we degrade our brothers and sisters. But all these are things that are coming up in relationship to the problems that are facing America, facing the people. Black people are in this crucial situation where our whole survival is being weighed in the balance. And everything is pointing towards the reality that black people are on the way out. Your job is diminishing, falling apart, and you have no place to turn because it ain't just us, it's all of America, and it's all of the world. And the world is going through a whole transformation, the white world. So this new world order, this thing that Bush and all his cronies are meeting on, they're talking about creating a whole new world. Where will black people fit in this reality? In the next 5 years, where will you be employed? And if employment is the viable means by which you survive, how will you survive if you are unemployed? There ain't but so many, the 7-Eleven stop and goes, for us to stick up. You got to stand outside the door and hit the brother when he coming out. All right, you get beat. You got it. Our criminals gonna have crime stoppers. That's right. There he is. But it's a very real, we laugh, it's a very real problem that we are faced with. And as the brother points out in the chapter that we're reading, that one of the problems that we are leading to in terms of all the things that I'm talking about is the fact that we don't really see a solution because of the psychological state that we exist in. We have been underdeveloped. Not undeveloped, underdeveloped. A systematic process to create a distorted mentality within the people that almost makes it impossible for them to fend and do for self. In the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, we call that niggerization. It's the idea that you can go and work for somebody else and be productive for them, but find it very difficult to work and be productive for self. Isn't that a problem? The fact that we have a very difficult time working with one another. I met this week with a brother who was working with this Pan-African plan and had this great meeting in the motherland where they were dealing with economic development, farm production, food production. And he was saying that people always lend him their moral support, but they don't lend him any programmatic support. But all that is a statement is that black people don't have any program by which to support anything. You don't know that's true? You go to every city, black city, every city in America, and find that the problem with black people is that we don't have an organization that has a program conducive for systematic change. And everywhere you go, now you find a whole lot of niggas got, you know, when I say niggas, I mean that definitively. The psychologically crippled, the underdeveloped. We have meetings where we all get together in a place like this and have wine and cheese, and all of us will come in with our business cards. You got a business card? Here my business card. You got a business card? Here my business card. Y'all ever been in a meeting? They pathetic. Yep. Brother, what you gotta understand, you gotta have what the industry is demanding. Hey, y'all been to me? It's a weird nigga that talks like that. It's embarrassing almost, because you be saying, what are you talking about? I say, brother, I mean, and they usually got a nice suit, little shirt too tight, but holding the shoulders all up, they've been going to the spa, working out there. But it's the idea of the industry. Got a card, see, and they really got it by the hand, If they're lucky, they got a used BMW. You know it? And they always talking about the man, what the man got, and they always got some economic plan. And they usually, and this is not a criticism of the church, they usually try to find a church to go to or a place to go to where you got big shot niggas. Isn't that right? So if you got, I ain't gonna name nobody in this town, so y'all won't be thinking I'm talking about no churches here. But say, for instance, if Michael Jordan goes there, I go where Michael Jordan goes. Or if, y'all name another big name. Warren. I said outside the city. Outside the city. We ain't talking about the inside the city. Outside the city. Name somebody in the I that you go, niggas you want to be around at least they can say Johnson. Spike Lee. I don't know if you go to Spike Lee's game. I mean, I might, but I don't know if the big niggas will go, Oh, you got that young, I'm going to tell you who would go to Spike Lee. The young pseudo-buffet. And that's a hell of a thing when you're a pseudo-buffet. Bad enough being a buffet, but when you're a pseudo-buffet, you pretending to be black middle class. You got a hell of a problem. That's your brother who got the suit but no shoes. Come home, you shop up to your shoes. It's like, they got the shoes and no suits. But it's the idea that, but it's like they go through the great act of pretending and they act like they know everything that's happening. It's like they ain't been in a meeting with Bush. I got a brother like that, but he considers himself to be bubbly. He ain't no bubbly, but he considers himself, he talks like that. He acts like every time he writes me a letter, I swear matter of fact, I just got one from him, and he said, well, Bush George is acting crazy, so I think I gotta talk to Ted and tell him I'm coming back. When y'all meet him, y'all see what I'm talking about. He's like, but I mean, he wouldn't consider, he ain't no Uncle Tom. I take that. But he just thinks he got it together. You know what I mean? And to call my mama, I just talked to your brother. And one of the bar figured it out. they have solution, and they themselves know they don't have no solution. You know what I mean? They will get us all bogged down and be talking to us, trying to tell us they got something together, and they don't have nothing together. All of us are in trouble. All of us. Everybody sitting in here, we are all in trouble in terms of the economic situation facing black America. We are all in trouble. And the job that you had, even if you're working for yourself at this time, you're in trouble, especially if you depend upon black people patronizing your situation. We are all in trouble, and if we try to have a solution based upon what white folks are doing, we're going to be in bigger trouble. Because the psychology of the white man has nothing to do with trying to solve the problems of black people. The white man has now demonstrated that he would rather you be viewed as being equal in America. Because as long as he sees you as being equal, he ain't got to do a damn thing about slavery. And our problem is we so hung up on trying to make him pay us the 40 acres and the mule that he owes us that we never think about, well, we done lost that. Let's do our own. You see what I'm saying? We are so aggressive. Like we got hundreds of years of civil rights involvement trying to get white people to answer to us. Rather than building a community situation, building cooperative economics, black people working together. Now you hear brothers and sisters come tell you, oh, black people got so many billions of dollars. We would qualify to be the 9th, 10th, 11th nation in the world. That ain't true. Because black people don't have a nation. Outside of what we trying to put together here. Black people don't have a nation, so to talk about black people pooling their dollars is ridiculous. Because they ain't gonna do it. Not as long as we think that we are a part of the American system. So black people don't represent no largest nation. If we do, we need to be blown up. You understand what I'm saying? So I mean, it ain't like we can walk around here acting like we got this capital. Well, we don't. We have all y'all. If it depends upon what you got in your pocket right now. What are we gonna do? And y'all the bougie. You know y'all the bougie. I'm not joking. Everybody in here, y'all, if they ask you, are you the proletariat? Are you the lumpen? Or are you the bourgeois? Y'all know that I have to say, at least you want to be bourgeois. You might have some generosity, or your ego might get in the way. You say, I don't know, I see me as being bougie. But you know you the bougies. Y'all do know the difference between the proletariat and the lumpen? The lumpen, as the brothers in the 60s, some of y'all from the 60s, y'all know the lumpen, the Black Panther Party. The lumpen, brother. We the lumpen. The lumpen are the street people. Pimps, whores, gangsters, brothers and sisters who live by their wit. Some of y'all say, what about that? Proletariat, kind of like the working class. The bourgeois are the so-called black elite. You know, who figure they got a little education. Y'all been to college? See, the lumpen don't go to college.
Street university.
You know what I'm saying? They don't go to the school down. They don't go to the University of Houston, but put that way. They go to street college. Yeah, University of Nicaragua. You know? But so they have different systems. Most of y'all know y'all educated. Been to school, you can read, you literate, at least functionally.
Bishop.
Which is not a criticism. Because a lot of our people are not functioning, a lot of our people are functionally illiterate, but we got a whole lot of people who are totally illiterate.
Yeah.
Right.
Which you can generally see when you're in the supermarket, people come and say, no, which one of them is on sale? Y'all laughing now, don't be laughing at your people. Now, how many of y'all have had people come up to you and say, which one of them is it? I mean, they do it like, it ain't like I can't read, it's like, which one of them, let me see which one that is now. One of them is 49, they can read numbers. So which one of them is the one for 49? I don't see it. He said, here it is. But that's a lot of people. And surprisingly enough, a lot of our young people, listen, I like that. Because it's been socially promoted, or they've been put in a situation where the educational system, where they can't pass the test, so they decide, you get to be 16 and you in the 8th grade, pretty soon you say, well, I need to forget it. Yeah? I mean, if you were 16 or 19 in the 8th grade, what would you say? Forget it. And then you go try to join the military, but the white man said, wait a minute, we tired of having illiterate people in the military. You can't have that either. And then we had our bougies go to the military, and the white man said, we'll start a war. And then y'all said, oh, I didn't know I was going to war. And you say, hey, home, this is the army. This is the military force. These are people who fight. All that computer training, all that other stuff you're doing, that's just science stuff. That was incentive for you to be willing to die for your country. And if you don't go, we put you in the penitentiary. You know, I didn't know that. Then you are functionally illiterate, because if you don't know what the military is, you understand? But again, that's problem. What do we do about solution? The idea that we're saying is that some kind of way we got to break the psychosis of this underdevelopment. The problem is, though, it has created a mindset that is very difficult to penetrate. Very difficult to penetrate. Because anything outside of the conditioning doesn't register with the underdeveloped person. The undeveloped person, they may be a seeker. They can take in and process new information. The underdeveloped person has to have the system broke up first before you can put something in. It's like, I mean, y'all know how to operate computers. It's like if the memory thing is full, what you got to do? You got to throw away files before you can process and put new information in. But see, the undeveloped person is like a brand new computer. It don't have nothing in there. You can take it and put some new stuff in there. But the underdeveloped is full. And so when we try to put new information in, it ain't got no room for it. It won't compute it. It won't process it. And so when you start talking about black people building for ourselves, it may even be able to say, how do we, yeah, that's good. But when they say that's good, they think that you are talking in the same way that Bush is talking. And you say, that ain't what we're talking about. Because see, black people look at development as something that's going to provide what we believe that makes us happy. Cars, clothes, sex, alcohol, nice house, and a trip to Jamaica and the Bahamas every now and then. Or to Europe. Why you go to Europe? I have no idea, but you know, it's the idea that you go look at the ruins of white people. But those things become good life. But then you say, no, we need something different. I had a brother the other day, and it's getting ready to close. I had a brother the other day. He told me his daughter was doing real good. I said, yeah? He said, yeah, she married a guy. He making good money. They live in a nice big 4-bedroom house. She drives a Volvo. They got 2 kids, and she doesn't work. He must be doing pretty good. That's what he followed up and said. And I thought that was a strange designation, a place to put his daughter in relationship to the idea that she was doing good. He ain't mentioned no relationship that she had with no people, no sense of community. I mean, he ain't said nothing about what she was doing other than the fact she wasn't working. And that indicated that her husband was making enough money to keep her where she didn't have to work. She could stay home. Now, what that means is that's his idea of good life, which means it probably then becomes her idea of good life. And knowing this particular family, I know that she probably got, quote unquote, education, went to college. You understand? So the idea then is information that she spent time getting, what does she do with that? And how does her life that she lives qualify in terms of good life? Now, I'm not saying she may be happy, just like you may be happy. But I doubt it. And that's not criticism, that's just saying that most people find it very difficult, black or white, in terms of being happy with just going to work and making a paycheck and coming back home. People need a sense of mission. And when we try to get black people this mission to deal with this situation that we are in, it's very difficult because we have to transform the whole thought patterns of black people and make them think in a different way. And the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church, what we're doing is creating a counterculture, a black counterculture, which means it's reversing the niggerized process. how the mind has been destroyed, messed up. Changing the value system of people, which has also been messed up. And a lot of our young people don't have any values. You know what I'm saying? They ain't been taught any. They don't know anything. They don't have any system. It's like I was listening to a guy on the radio the other day, and that's what he was saying. It was so true. He's saying, what do y'all think about prison reform? And the guy said, you know, you can build more prisons, but prisons don't do anything in terms of stopping people from being criminals. I don't know how many of y'all been in penitentiary. Statistics say 1 out of 4 y'all been, brother. Or at least on probation, whatever. But the idea is, does prison stop you from being a criminal? It's that the majority of people, which I would agree with, they don't fear so much the police. I mean, the idea of going to jail isn't what keeps a good person from being a criminal. What keeps you from being a criminal, this guy said, and I agree with him, is the type of family you come out of.
Yeah.
It's like, I know to this day, if I go out here and steal something from the culture center and get caught, I ain't worried about the Maccabees and the police. I'm worried about my mama getting on the 747 coming down here. Really? And I'm grown. But the idea is that my mama has raised me in a way, and my daddy raised me in a way that taught me that that ain't right. Stealing is inappropriate behavior, and the idea is that you're stealing from self when you're stealing from your community. You see what I'm saying? And so the idea is that the individual then is raised with a certain sense of moral character, a certain value system, and they're raised with a certain sense of community that how many of you would actually think about robbing some old lady? And you raised with your mama, your grandmama, and you got relatives around you, family around you. You raised in a stable environment where y'all don't have to move every year. You build a relationship with all the old ladies in the community. So every time I hear somebody hitting an old lady in the head, I think about my mama, I think about my grandmama, I think about the old lady next door, up and down the street, and it pains me to hear that. But I know I would never do nothing like that. And I know most of you would never do anything like that. Because you know why? You were raised with a certain value system. Young kids that can go out here and hit old ladies in the head ain't got no values. And it's because nobody gave them any. You understand what I'm saying? So part of the idea of what we do in the counterculture is try to then reinstill new values. Different kind of lifestyle that is based upon community. The American system is based upon the rights of the individual. Ours is based upon the rights of the community. The community ought to expect from you a better way of life. That you have to work in conjunction with the community. Everybody in here ought to be able to expect, a sister ought to be able to get up out of here and leave out of here, leave her purse in that chair, and not have to worry about you putting your fingers in it. But you ought to be able to do the same. Somebody ought to be able to drop a $100 bill on the floor and be able to go up to the counter and ask, did somebody find a $100 bill in there, and because one of y'all turned it in. Now I know that might be wishful thinking with the fact that some of y'all been corrupted. You know what I mean? But if you think that I would never turn it in, that's because you're a heathen and you have no sense of morality. You just ain't no good at this point. You can be helped. But the idea is that a lot of us might, because of our corruption, now say, that's just $100 I got that's going towards something I'm going to get. Not thinking that the person that lost it, knowing the black condition, this person just lost their rent money. They're going to be put out. This person just lost the money to buy their children some clothes, some shoes, some food. You understand what I'm saying? You going in somebody's purse, you taking away somebody's livelihood. That means you are now creating a situation where some sister may have to go out and try to figure out some other alternative by which she's going to take care of the family. Or some brother's going to have to go out and stick up a store he's going to at least feel. You understand what I'm saying? So the community ought to be able to expect that we reinforce and expect the greatest good from each other in terms of reinforcing and supporting one another, protecting one another, and thinking about one another in terms of pride and dignity. Because we one people. But that means we have to bust up that underdevelopment that reinforces that individual and develop a sense of community. You understand what I'm talking about? Yeah. I'm going to stop here now. Look here. I'm going to say it again. It is slave culture for you not to read your homework assignment. Y'all got a whole week to read one chapter in a book. And that chapter starts on page 23, and it ends on page, what was that? 51. How many pages is that? How many? Y'all go take a remedial math course while you're here. Page 51, right? If you read 2 pages a day, my granddaddy and my daddy told me one thing, never go to bed. I heard other people say the same thing. Never go to bed without learning something new. Because you always wake up in the morning with something new in your system. If you read 2 pages a night before you go to bed, by the time you come back next week, you have it complete. Then you would have accomplished something. You got through a whole chapter of a book. Some of y'all ain't looked in a book in a long time. And it's chapter 1 of How Capitalism Underdeveloped Black America. If you buy it, if you don't have it, you buy it. If you participate in the class, you get a 10% discount on the book. So, I'm going to close here. Talking about the underdevelopment of black people, talking about the economic system, trying to understand the black reality, what we have to do about it, and we'll pick up on it next week. Amen.
Is this in the way of anybody? Only you? That better? Not much. It's better for you to move than for me to keep moving the ball.
Can we move the podium over a little bit?
No, you can't just move the podium. Believe in structure and organization. The man, graphics man, put the podium here because this is where it belongs. Right? It's easy to move your behind. Huh? You can just move on one seat.
Still can't see. That's okay. That's fine. That's fine, Bishop Kimathi.
You stand up, man, right? We've been dealing with the introduction to the African worldview. And we've been doing that because I'm trying to establish a link between the philosophy of black Christian nationalism and the African worldview. The African worldview is a way of looking at the world as particular to African people. And our contention is that the black man's problem is that we have no way of looking at the world which allows for the development of black people. So we don't tend to put together the kind of structures, the kind of institutions, nor to live the kind of life that leads to the development of black people. Without a philosophy of any kind, we participate in the white man's way of looking at the world, which means that we participate in his program, and his program is a program of underdevelopment of black people. And so, by virtue of the fact that we don't have a counter philosophy, we participate in his philosophy, which means that even in the way that we think in a way that is against ourselves. Even when we try to have progressive ideas and to engage in progressive programs, we engage in progressive programs that are against ourselves. Probably the most classic example of that is the one that I was dealing with last Sunday about integration. It is an effort of a people to have a better condition, but using the idea system of the oppressor. So you're using the oppressor's ideas to arrive at a better situation for yourself, which is impossible. Because what you're going to do is come to the conclusion that makes the best sense in terms of his system and not in terms of the way that you function. What we have postulated is that black Christian nationalism comprises the first comprehensive black philosophy of life since the African diaspora. There hasn't been any other philosophy of life for black people in the last 400 years than black Christian nationalism. That's fundamentally why all of the efforts that we've engaged in have been efforts that have failed. Usually they were efforts designed to deal with some immediate problem. And so we would come together in panic or in rage about some particular community problem or some particular plantation problem or some particular national problem. And we would do whatever we would do, but it was always short-lived and always had a short vision and short range because it never was based on a comprehensive idea system. It was never based on a comprehensive way of looking at the world. A whole way of looking at the world. If you have a community problem, you need street lights, police brutality, anything like that, people come together and they organize to alleviate that problem, as if that problem is a problem in isolation. And so when people become organized, they're only organized for a short period of time because they're only organized to remove that immediate problem. So last week we started out trying to deal with the question, why do we need a worldview? That's a mighty large question. It's probably so big that most people don't get it in talking about it one time. It's a large question because the perception of people in terms of the way we're taught is that truth is truth. And that there's no such thing as something not being true. You know, there's just truth. And either you got the truth or you don't have the truth. That would be really nice. But the truth is something that a group of people arrive at as a result of their particular experience. Which means different people have different truths. And when we think the truth is just the truth, and we're black and powerless, then we are saying the truth is what we're taught. And if we're going on what we're taught, we're in trouble. Because we're taught a bunch of negative things about ourselves and negative things about what we can do. And if we believe that that is just the truth, then the nails are in the coffin and we're in this situation forever. Every people have a worldview. People fight wars because they have competing worldviews. Every people have a worldview. It's something about the way they look at the world, which is basically different than the way other people look at the world. It is not a simple issue of some people being good and other people being bad. They have different worldviews. Now, depending upon which group you're in, if you're in one group, you say the other group is evil. If you're in this group, you say this group is evil. But that is the way of the world. That's why wars are fought. That's why borders are disputed. That's why things go on like they go on, and world dynamics, geopolitical dynamics work out like they work out. Because people have different worldviews. It's a way of looking at the world. And when you're born into the world, a person is a product of two steps that we discussed last week. You're a product of God's act of creation, and you're also a product of socialization, the society you're born into. You're born on this side of the room, you look at the world like these people look at it. You're born on this side of the room, you look at the world the way these people look at it. If you're born on this side of the room, you got funny feelings about these people over here. They speak a different language, they got different customs. What's all that praying they're doing with their hands extended? That's some mighty funny stuff. What's all that washing their hands 5 times a day before they pray? What's all that they don't eat pork? What's all that? That's some mighty funny stuff. Now y'all got barbecues and McDonald's and Disneyland, everything like that, and you cannot understand why these people over here got this rigid lifestyle and you over here just having a ball. Now over here y'all got the same problem with that. These people here, they don't seem to believe in nothing. They just fun-loving. They don't believe in nothing. They don't wash their hands when they pray. So y'all got all kind of rumors about them. They wipe their butt and they don't wash their hands. They don't wash their hands before they eat. And all kind of rumors start. But over a period of time, you develop very serious differences, and that gulf between the two of you is wider than that aisle by worldview. You look at the world differently, and all people do. When you're born into a group, you're born in that particular group's worldview. The question we asked last week is, what happens if you're born into a group where the worldview you adopt is one that is against you? The only way that you have to develop your mind, what's in your mind comes from a group of people. There's nothing in your mind that doesn't come from a group of people. Whatever is in your mind, you've read it, you've seen it, you've heard it, it's come from your associations with a group of people. What if you're born into a group, into a society that is anti-you? That declares you inferior, that believes you're ugly, that believes you're stupid, that believes that you have none of the potentialities of other people. What if you're born in that kind of situation? You are a product of that society. And there's no such thing as being above that. Well, I'm above the society's definition of me. It's virtually impossible. Because all you have to think with are the ideas that come from the society of which you're a part. You don't have anything else to think with. And so when you're thinking with somebody's words, you're thinking with somebody's concepts, you're thinking with somebody's ideas, you're thinking with the experiences you've had, you're thinking with things that you've heard from other people, you're thinking with the stuff that comes out of a particular society. Now, we haven't had a black worldview, and the idea, worldview theory holds that it's hard for people to relate intelligently to their environment if they don't have a worldview. It's hard to deal with life intelligently if you don't have a worldview. When you think you're being smart, you're being stupid, because you're not operating on your own worldview. You say, well, if I scrape up my money and I save and I go to school and I work real hard and I try to better my life and teach my child to do the same thing, actually I'm being real smart. No, it depends on what worldview you got. If you got the white man's worldview, that's exactly what you're supposed to do. But if you really had a black worldview, you'd say this is stupid, because by telling my child all these things about what they can do and all the opportunities that are available to them, I'm actually destroying them, because I'm lying to them. I'm telling them that if you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want, and you can't do anything you want, because you're black. And in a society that's against black people, there are certain ceilings on what you can do and how high you can go. And to tell your child all you have to do is work real hard is creating a prescription for insanity. You driving the child nuts. I just got to work hard. I just got to do more, so I can do more coke. It's a prescription for insanity. And you take a whole generation of children and you teach them, all opportunities open to you. You can be whatever you want it to be. If you're willing to work, you can do it, become anything you want to become. It's lying and creating a situation where you're driving people crazy. No wonder they kill each other in the streets. No wonder they get high. No, it's a world that doesn't make sense, because we are dealing in terms of ideas which are not true for black people. Yes. Now, for a white child, those ideas are true. You can go as high as your ability can take you. It doesn't make a difference what your background is, unless you got black blood in it and it comes out in the newspaper. You can go as high as your ability will take you. But for a black child, that's not true. And that's no excuse to act a fool and just say, well, I may as well just lay down now. I may as well just go out with a bang, just have me a good time from now on and live just live the hell out of these next 5 years. That really is not what we're advocating. What we're saying is that a worldview determines almost everything about your possibilities in life. And when you're operating, no matter how much talent you have, no matter how much ability you have, no matter what your intentions are, if you're operating on the basis of a worldview that is not true for you, you're in trouble. And so our thing is that people have to have some basis, a world that makes sense, some orderly understanding of the way things are, so that they can live out a complete life, a worldview. And we're saying that black Christian nationalism is the only worldview black people have. The black people, we said last week, have been deliberately separated from the worldview, from any worldview that interferes with a program of underdevelopment. Bishop Olu talked about underdevelopment, so I'm going to talk about that again. Basically, it means intentionally limiting a people's potential. Intentionally limiting a people's potential for purposes of exploitation. Everybody in here is a raw material, resource, like coal, tin, iron, in terms of our relationship to the white institutional structure. We're a resource to be used. They got way more use out of our daddies and granddaddies than they get out of us. Because now we don't have much to do, so we're like a resource that's no longer needed. Like we're like some material that people don't use anymore, and it's just sitting around. So they just store it somewhere, whether they store it in the ghetto. And keep it for when they need war. When there's a war or something, then they call out the reserves or something. In the meanwhile, they'll bring some stuff in here so we can buy it, so whatever little money we got is still coming out, and they're benefiting from that, so they're at least exploiting our money, what little money we got. But we're a resource. The problem with black people is that black people have never understood and will not accept the fact that we're nothing more than a resource in the American institutional structure. We think we're people. And that's a problem. If you think the white man looks at you like you're a person, then you've got a problem in terms of worldview. Come on, baby. To a white person, you're not a problem. You're not a person. You are a commodity. You are a resource to be used and exploited. And when your exploitability is used up, then there is no use for you. That's why people bring in, work you to death, try to give you as little benefits, little resources, as little security as possible. You're not on the team. You're the mascot. You sit on the end of the bench. You say yes, 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 but if there's not room on the plane, you can leave the mascot because you don't really need them. I mean, if everything else, all things being equal, everything being great, in the best of all worlds, you bring the mascot along because you might need that little boost. somebody jumping around out there in a little hula hoop skirt or something. But the mascot is just on the end of the bench. They're not on the team. They're not real players. They just assist. And that's what black people are. We are mascots on the end of the bench. And what we try to explain is that the American society is a society based on underdevelopment. It is not that we are being temporarily mistreated. That's a purpose. There is no other purpose for black people but to be mistreated. We were born here to work. They worked to death out of all of us. They became rich. We became poor. Our condition hasn't really changed in all the time we've been here because the polarization in terms of our condition has remained the same. When white people had more, we had more. But basically our relationship in terms of distance has remained the same. All that in the middle, talking about brotherhood and getting along, that's just part of the program. That has nothing to do with how much we actually have. We actually have very little. We actually, if we miss a few checks, we're going to be in the street, we're going to be homeless, we're going to be living on the viaduct. Any one person in here miss 3-4 checks, that's it. You never get back on your feet, ever. Because you are an exploitable commodity. Even a person with a degree or an advanced degree is an exploitable commodity. When you get an advanced degree, they stop exploiting your back and start exploiting your brain. But a black man with a PhD still has to plug into a system. You have to have some place to use it. You can be homeless with a PhD unless you're going to plug into a system. If you say, I refuse to be exploited, then what are you going to do? Unless you came in the nation, what would you do? You have no place to go but to go offer your services to some corporation willing to pay you for it. You have no place to go. You go in and say, here's my application. I come to be exploited. I'm begging you to exploit. Please exploit. Now, you got to eat, you got to live, and so I guess that's the way the system functions. That's the way to make sure you always exploit it, is to make it impossible for you to live unless you are being exploited by the system. So, we're dealing with a basic relationship that you have to understand to recognize why it's not just that it would be nice if black people had something. If black people don't have anything, we can't function, we can't live. If we don't have anything, we are completely dependent. The three features of life in an underdeveloped society is inequality, exploitation, and dependency. People being underdeveloped are not equal. Inequality is basic. There's no such thing as we're going to reach some day where we're all judged on the content of our character. It won't happen because you have to tear up America for it to happen. America is a crimogenic society. It is based on criminal exploitation of black people. The criminal exploitation of black people is legitimate. The commandment, thou shalt not steal, is violated with black people every day. It has been for 400 years because our labor has been stolen. Our worth and value has been stolen to create the great America that we see. The whole Western world that we see. The rape and brutal penetration and exploitation of Africa built up all of everything that's in the Western world. And the demise of black people signaled the rise of white people. They happen in direct correlation to each other. Now in the fancy world where the oppressor is giving you ideas about it's not good to talk about race, it's not good to talk about white and black, if you buy into that, you have no possibility of understanding the world at all. You know, we are people. You never understand anything. We are people. It's like Bush's new colorblind society thing. We're a colorblind society. So there's no need for affirmative action because we're a colorblind society. He's taking equality and turning it back on black people. We don't need any preferential treatment because we're a colorblind society. We don't even see your color. So we are not going to hurt you, but we're not going to help you. But the government doesn't have to hurt you because the whole structure is designed to tell you the peace. And if laws are not structured in such a way as to help people, then people don't get help. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of underdevelopment is the side of the white society, which is overdeveloped. White society is overdeveloped. And I don't think you can understand underdevelopment without understanding overdevelopment. When you have raped and exploited people to generation after generation after generation, you have accumulated massive and unimaginable wealth. I mean, wealth that you can't even conceive of. Mega trillions of dollars that make possible a style of life and standards of living that nobody ever even dreamed possible for human beings. That's overdeveloped society. The white society is overdeveloped. The whole world feeds into a very small number of people and makes the style of life impossible, makes the style of life possible. The style of life where luxuries and living like a king becomes a necessity, where your psychology is tied to a trip to the Bahamas and a Mercedes-Benz and all of the advantages of life in overdeveloped society. It becomes, this is normal. So you create a society where basically white people and black people that buy into those values get used to a lifestyle that can't possibly be sustained unless you're just going to exploit everybody in the world. 35 million people are starving in Africa because overdevelopment. White people talk about compassion fatigue and benevolence burnout when they got to send something back. I'm tired of giving to people who have a catastrophe. When they don't understand that the reason those people are starving is because they live the life they live. There is farmland in Africa that's farmable, but nobody wants to farm it because they want the Africans to buy the food that comes from American farmers. And so rather than helping a farmer get on his feet and to develop Africa in terms of a farming so they can feed themselves, they create conditions that make it impossible for the African to get on his feet and cause the soil to erode and start to blow, and the whole topsoil blows off and turns land in a desert. And the Sudan expands, and as it expands, it grows right into people's land that used to be arid, where they used to grow food. And people starve because it's by design. They want to get the wheat from Kansas and Iowa and sell that, rather than to make these people capable of taking care of themselves. And so it is a overdevelopment, underdevelopment. Overdevelopment is possible because of underdevelopment. Remember that when you see white folks coming and you going to work and you downtown and you see white folks walking around with $2,000 worth of clothes on, it's possible because of your underdevelopment. Because you ain't hardly got no bottoms in your shoes. Because you didn't have money enough to get your hair fixed up. Because you didn't have money enough to do what they did. They're living off the wealth of black people. It's a direct correlation. It is not that I would like to get to the place where I can do that too. You can get to the place to do that too if you become valuable enough to their system to be exploited on that level. It is a direct relationship. It's hard. It's constantly hard to get people to understand that it's a direct relationship. Like in the nation, you would think people understand that. Which would mean then that you would put everything in the nation you possibly could. Because it's a direct relationship. It's a direct relationship. You got a little extra money, it belongs in the other system because you've got to be able to defend yourself against underdevelopment. You got to build a system that's strong enough to resist the brutal exploitation of a society that is structured that way. Which means that every extra dime would have to go into the institutional structure that protects you. If it doesn't, you don't have that system that protects you, you're an isolated individual at the mercy of a network of institutions out to skin you behind alive. Come on. Right. And if you say, well, I'd like to keep this extra for me. You're not keeping it for you. You're keeping it for white people. What can you do with it? What can you do with it? It's a Federal Reserve note. It ain't gold. This is representative of some gold. It is somewhere in the white man's bank. It doesn't mean anything. It has no value except in his system. Now what you got to do is you either put this in one system or the other. Now when you take it down, and I understand it's necessary to take it down and give it to him for something that we can't provide everything. But when you take it down and give it to him, you have given it away. It's gone. It never comes back. It's gone. Nothing comes back. The white man doesn't build anything in the black community. Everything he built in the black community is for purposes of taking more of these out. Everything built in the black community takes stuff out. There's no self-help, no universities, nothing that comes in the black community. It's all like receptacles of mechanisms of exploitation. Stop and go, the convenience stores, gas stations, things designed to rape you clean. The little pickings he gives you to take care of yourself is like the plantation owner's general store. He just got a whole lot of little general stores all over the black community. And we go to them and then they take back what they gave us. Right. So what we have to do is try to break this free, put it back in a system that begins to develop in our interest. I know this is rough going. This is hard to understand. But worldview means that you understand, you look at the world in such a way that you understand what is in your interest and what is not. When you're taking care of something for yourself, it's generally not for you, because you can't do anything with it. You can't really do anything at all unless you're plugged into a system. Now, last week we were talking about mind control. Mind control is a basic feature of a society built on underdevelopment. Your mind has to be controlled. And so, it's important that schools, churches, and everything teach a certain message that allows you to be exploitable. Institutions of all kinds exist, but they exist on a body of knowledge, a system of belief. And they call this culture. Now this could be schools, and this could be economic institutions, this could be church, government. These institutions all function out of a body of knowledge. They don't function independently of a body of knowledge. All institutions are tied into a way of thinking, into a common idea system. The culture is given expression in institutions. The things people believe. White people believe that black people are inferior. That is one of the basic features of this deep theory of culture. The deep theory of culture holds that there are basic cultural assumptions that are so deep in culture, they never change. Ever. They never change. There are certain things people believe at the core of their culture that never change. Now, things up here on a superficial level at the top of the culture will change. All right, you used to couldn't go in the bathroom with white people, now you can.
Well,
You used to couldn't eat a hot dog at a hot dog stand, now you can. You used to couldn't drink out of a water fountain, and now you can. You used to couldn't go anywhere you wanted to if you didn't have the money, now you can. And people say, that means we're free. That doesn't mean anything. That means you can eat at a hot dog stand, I mean you can go in the bathroom, you can drink out of a water fountain. Nothing's changed. But we feel like it's changed. But nothing really changed. Because these assumptions down here never changed. Used to have Jim Crow laws, black codes and Jim Crow rules. They never changed. Those are superficial things that change. All right, now you can get on a train. Now you don't have to sit on the back of the bus. Those things were superficial. The basic relationship of black people to the white man system still didn't change. We are no better off. As a matter of fact, we are worse off. I would rather sit on the back of the bus and black people have a job than to be in the situation we're in. So nothing changed. The deep theory of culture holds that there are certain things that never change. They are the basic things the culture believes in. They never change. Culture resists change by nature. They never change. The basic thing that this culture, in terms of black people, the basic thing is that this culture believes that we are inferior. That cannot be changed. You can find a white friend. That white friend, way down, deep down, the according to all of the experiments done, still feels that you might be nice, but you are not as human as I am. That your group, as in general, is less kind, less intelligent, less responsible, less dependable than other groups. That is a basic feature of this culture. It's built down at the bottom. I mean, it's like in the Declaration of Declaration of Independence. It's in all of the writings of Western literature. It's in the implications of Western music. It's in everything in Western scholarship. Is this underlying myth of inferiority that is perpetrated everywhere. It's part of the culture. You can't tell people, okay, now you're equal, and then everybody's going to change and respond to you like a person because it's built into the culture. It's built into, and you can't do it unless you taught the culture. You can't tear up a culture because people have no other way of looking at the world. And so every time you would deal with anything, it comes back to this deep theory of culture. At the bottom are basic assumptions that never change. That's why there's no possibility of changing black people's relationship to this society. There is no possibility of persuading people to treat us differently or anything like that. Because ultimately, it comes down to white society believes that black people exist on the earth to be exploited. And that they exploit black people by divine right. It is in the very structure of the universe. Nobody's going to come out and tell you that just that plain, because then you want to hit them in the mouth. Nobody's going to come out, but that is the way the society is organized. It's by divine right. Racism grows out of a couple of things that are basic, like down here when you get down to this level of culture. The white man believes a thing called manifest destiny. Manifest destiny believes that it is the white man's right to govern the world, given by God. This is the core of the thinking of Thomas Jefferson, John Locke, Hume, and all of those old philosophers upon which all of Western philosophy is built. This idea of manifest destiny. This is the defense for exploiting Africa, for colonizing the world. Manifest destiny. We are Christians. We are under the auspices of Christianity and the Pope and Jesus, and we have, by divine right, the ability to go out and to convert the world. So there has never been a moral problem with going out to convert the world. There's never been a moral problem with dominating the world, because they believe that they are bringing the world into a better situation by dominating. Manifest destiny is a powerful, powerful thing. And when you have a people who believe in manifest destiny, that we have been ordained by God to run the world, that we've been ordained by God to run the world, you have a hard time marshaling a moral argument against the way you've been treated. It's taught in school, it's constantly reinforced in poetry and music and everything. Manifest destiny. That's one pillar. The other one, the white man's burden. The white man's burden holds that God holds white people responsible for the state of the world. It is the white man's responsibility to take care of his younger brothers. One guy said that if man was born in Africa, Africa was only an indifferent kindergarten. That man didn't really rise to his true potential until he moved to Europe. And so he said, yes, we are our brother's keeper, but we are their older brother, and they are our younger brother. We have to take care of the colored people of the world. Now, I'm not making this up.
You're not.
Manifest destiny in the white man's burden is the way white people think. Because you don't really examine behind the newspaper or behind what somebody is saying, why do you think Bush acts like he acts? How can Reagan act like he acts? You think he's just evil? Well, he's not evil. He's the prototype American still shape world dynamics today. The deep theory of culture is still alive. The whole idea that the relationship between races is getting better is naive and misguided. It's getting worse. It's getting worse because these things are still alive. The war in the Persian Gulf War is a perfect example of these things still being alive. In the New York Times in early 1990, Saddam Hussein was described as a handsome, intelligent man who ruled fairly and justly. At the end of 1990, they said Saddam Hussein was a pathological liar and a maniacal killer. And they gave him all these kind of bestial qualities that seem to be non-human in terms of their way of describing him. I mean, they don't really describe Saddam Hussein like a man, like another person. He's like a maniac, he's nuts, he's a maniac, like this, when black people started struggling for liberation in Kenya, that they killing white folks and they drinking their blood, the Mau Mau, they're just monsters, they were just people fighting for their liberation. But when the organs of the press got to working on Saddam Hussein, they went right back to their declaring him inferior and making him some kind of maniacal, weird, psychologically distraught person. And all he was doing was fighting for power like they were fighting for power. The whole idea of the white man's burden and manifest destiny, they still shape world events today. Reagan's vision of the 21st century, which was his philosophy, Reagan's vision of the 21st century, then Bush's New World Order. New World Order is not New World Order, it's the Old World Order. It's the same old thing. Yeah. It's a New World Order in which white supremacy and domination are still alive. And the way that they do it now is it's the same situation, but the way they do it now is they recognize the third world is catching up. The third world is catching up. Here's Japan, become a real player in the world. As people of color, that ain't fair. They're not supposed to be in it because manifest destiny in the white man's burden. Japan becomes a real player. Here comes Taiwan. Here comes Korea. And here comes Hong Kong. All these places are like catching up. And here comes India. Now here comes Iraq. And here comes these people of color who are becoming players. Here comes the Arab world that starts their oil embargo and messes up the whole country. And they're messing with our freedom. And so they're messing up the whole thing because they are tearing up the white man's power. So what did they do? They very quietly in the United States, all during the 80s, took all the money and transferred it up. Reagan says, tax the middle class, tax poor people, take all the supports out for poor people, create money for the corporations. They don't have to pay any taxes. Give them tax breaks and tax credits and transfer the money up. So in the 80s, what you witness is the greatest transfer of money upward in the history of the world. Money transferred up, meaning that money that used to be available in circulation was now transferred up into fewer and fewer hands. So there was a concentration of money at the top. For what? For the purposes of competing against people of color who are now messing with the white man's burden and manifest destiny. Reagan wasn't crazy. He understood what he had to do, and white industrialists understood what they had to do. They had to cut the strings of taking care of black people who couldn't do anything and send the money up. They sent the money up into hands of people who could use that money to create a new power base for white people that would take care of them for the next 1,000 years. The money went up. So the United States got in some position to make a move. And then there's Europe. Europe tore down its borders. These countries that have warred for thousands of years tore down their borders. France, England, between England and Western Europe, there's now a tunnel being built that will run across, like it's all one country. Germany, France, they all are being linked together as one country. They have one police force. They have one money. All the separate governments have dismantled themselves to create one government, the European Common Market, in order that they could get in some position to strengthen the white man's position in the world. So now you got the United States, and you got Europe, and then they reunified Germany and brought it into Europe and made it much stronger, and then they got like
Russia.
Israel.
That's right. Agent in the East.
Israel is like a satellite power
That's right.
designed to make sure that the Arab world don't act a fool with the oil. If they do, Israel can go in and kick their butt.
That's right.
White man never intends to be brought down to his knees again because the Arabs start acting a fool with the oil. So he got like a police force right there in the Arab world.
That's right.
Anytime he wants anything done in the Arab world, he tells Israel, all right, jump on it.
Do your thing.
Deal with it. All right, Israel, so that they become part of this white situation. Now, the funny thing about Israel is the early Zionists asked not to go to Israel. They asked to go to the Congo. They asked to be sent to the Congo to be a fountainhead for Western civilization. They wanted to go to the Congo and take it over and control Africa. But they didn't let them do that because they said, no, we got somebody down there. They got the South Africa.
Now you got it.
The South Africans take care of Africa. Don't mess up all the resources. Keep niggas who can up all the resources and hoard them for themselves. Keep them there. Israel deal with the Arab world. And now they say, well, you know, we got one last link. We could do much better in terms of maintaining white power and domination if there wasn't so much competition in terms of Europe. So this whole meeting going on this week is to bring Russia into the fold. Now they're going to bail out Russia. They're going to take the money that used to take care of black people and get that to Russia. They're going to bail out Russia. They're going to give Russia tax money and then go make Russia strong again. So that Russia can become a part of the white domination conglomerate of the world. And they think that'll set them up for the next 1,000 years. First thing they did today is that when they got together, Bush and Gorbachev sat down and said, look, we need to have an arms control treaty. You stop making bombs, we stop making bombs. All the bombs we got, we get rid of them. We'll be brothers. And now that we stop making nuclear weapons, we got to make sure nobody else has none. So now they want to bomb Iraq. They want to go back and bomb Iraq again. Because they think they might have missed something and they might have a nuclear bomb. They don't want a chance. They want to go back and bomb Iraq again. The war's over, there's no war. But the whole world comes together and says, well, you know, we need to bomb them again because we don't know if they got one or not. Because they're not part of the white domination group. And they fear the fact that they might have it. Now, they got a bomb, they got a bomb, all of them got bombs, and they got bombs. Black folks don't have no bomb.
No gas. No.
The Japanese, they don't even mess around with arms. And so it's white domination. It is no different than it was in the days of the plantation. Same dynamic. No matter what people say, what rules people say about we all got to live together, we are the world, let's send food to such and such, let's help out everybody, everybody's your brother. When you get down to naked and raw power, this is the deal. United States, Europe, Israel, South Africa, and Russia. They dropped the sanctions on South Africa. Why? Because they're in the group. Well, you know how they can say South Africans are free.
They got the voting money.
Well, they got an awful lot of it anyway. But they're in the group. They're in the group, and they're not. Nobody can say that black people are now free, and that's why they did it, or that apartheid is over. That's why they did it. They don't give a damn about apartheid. It ain't got nothing to do with it. It got to do with maintaining white supremacy and domination in the world. Bring Russia into the fold, and when they bring Russia into the fold, what does Russia do? Breaks up the Soviet Union. Understand, it's not everybody coming into the fold, just Russia. Russia is like, if this is the Soviet Union, Russia is that much, and then you got all these other little countries. They putting all these down. We just want the white part. All the yellow Russians, they don't get, what's his name, Boris Yeltsin, he's not president of the Soviet Union, he's president of Russia. He's president of the white Western Russians who are the relatives of the French and the Germans and the British. And so he's breaking them off, bringing them into the more money to work with than I take care of all these other people here. And so this whole thing is the way it's working. Domestic issues are not important for America. So all of the NAACP's posturing about what America needs to do, these issues are not important. Internal issues in America are not important. Education for black people is not important. Unemployment is not important. As long as the bulk of white people are working, and the bulk of white people have money, and they have a very low white unemployment rate, life is stable. Because we're not on the agenda. Black leadership that believes they can argue people into abandoning this strategy is stupid and inept, and the only people more stupid are people that will listen to them. You cannot argue people out of abandoning a strategy that's going to set their children up for the next 1,000 years.
That's right.
And so they are moving into the 21st century, understanding what they're doing, and there's nothing we can say. What we need is a whole nother worldview. When you start talking about, like, yeah, black people now talking about things got bad, they're going to become a conservative. I mean, you really don't understand what I just said. A black person being a conservative. A conservative means to conserve the status quo. Keep things exactly like they are. When a black person says, I want to be a conservative, they're saying, I abandon everything I believe in, everything, all my people and everything. I want to keep things like they are. So that I can be a house pet for white people. So they'll adopt me in and treat me good and feed me and keep me on the leash in their backyard or something. It is really stupid. But it becomes, if you don't believe black people can do anything, it becomes one of the only sensible strategies you can adopt. Unless you just don't want to think about it at all. There has to be a whole black, a whole counter-black worldview, where we understand that people of color are outside of this realm. This, we didn't create it, so we don't have to feel like we ought not be organized together. We didn't create it. They organized against us. The only intelligent thing to do is respond. Our problem with organizing is we have no philosophy around which to come together. We have no common body of knowledge that we all believe in the black world, enough to come together to combat this, to create a united front against this. What the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church postulates to do is to provide black Christian nationalism as that philosophy. There's a very popular philosophy now, it's called Afrocentricity. And people are trying to develop it and use it in schools and stuff, create a positive black value system for black people, because we tend to do so much better when we're in that kind of system. The problem is, you can't have Afrocentricity unless you can't have a philosophy outside of a system. You got to have the organs of power. You got to have all these things, the banks, the schools, the churches. You got to have all of that in order to have a system. And so Afrocentricity has to have something to plug into. We believe that the African worldview is the only basis upon which to reorganize the world. African worldview has been the foundation of everything for the last 1,000,000 years. And what we attempt to do is to reconstruct the African worldview. Because the African worldview is the basic worldview of all people of color in the world. We can organize on the basis of the African worldview and not be giving people something that is foreign to them. The African worldview is the basic worldview, the basic way of looking at the world that was given to people of color as the black man migrated around the world at the beginning of time. It's a religious worldview, a spiritual worldview, which holds two things fundamentally. It believes in communalism, and it believes in the unified field concept of God's power. All worldviews in the world of people of color are religious worldviews, spiritual worldviews. When we start talking about the African worldview, we're not talking about anything foreign to people in Hawaiian Islands or in the South Pacific or in India or in the Far East. They're all religious worldviews. They all got them from the African who gave them to them in the first place. And so when we start talking about organizing the black world on the basis of the African worldview, we're talking about putting this back together. Basically, it involves something that the white man doesn't believe in and doesn't accept, and it gives us a tremendous advantage. It believes in 4 dimensions. There's the self, complete development of the person, the self. Then there's society, people living together in harmony. That's the second dimension of existence. White folks got both of those. They don't work too good, but they got both of them. Then there's the environment. That you not only have to be in harmony with yourself and in harmony with society, but in harmony with the environment around you. Creating a way of life where you're not tearing up the environment, but acting in harmony with it would be a drastic revolution in terms of the way white people look at the world, in terms of being at war with the world. Conquering, tearing up nature for their own benefit. And the 4th dimension is the one the white man doesn't have, doesn't even believe in, can't conceive of. The spiritual dimension. And according to the African, the 4th dimension, the spirit world, the invisible world, is the one that gives the visible world all its significance. That the most important things in life are not seen, they're unseen. The most important powers, the thing that determines how things appear in the visible world, has to do with spiritual power in the unseen world. White folks don't believe in it, and a whole lot of us got like white folks, so we don't believe in it. We believe in the things we can see.
Yeah.
The African worldview believes that the most important things are things we can't see. And that the world is a great big sea of God's power. Unified field concept of God's power. The whole African world is put together on that basis. And for the next few weeks, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to take the African worldview apart and understand how this constitutes a black worldview that makes it possible for us to organize black people to resist the development of a white domination that's set up to run the world for the next 1,000 years. And if we cannot build black people to develop black people on this basis, we don't have any basis for development. First people in the world are going to die out will be black people in America, because we're going to be living in Indian reservations in the modern world. The people who can't live in places where we have no way of sustaining a decent level of life. It's already almost gone. It's already very far gone. And the only way that you can believe there's hope for black people is to believe in the 4th dimension, the spiritual dimension. That the answer to the black man's power and the spiritual dimension. That our relationship with God's universal power, ever-present power, if we could tap the secret, regain what we had, come to understand it like we did, so that we can master our present situation, then that is the only possibility of us getting out of the situation. If we learn to master that power, to use it effectively, there's nothing that black people can't do. The development of the black worldview is just a word. The first challenge is getting us back to the point we believe in it. So, Ladino, this for you. Utaratibu wakutizama dunia. The African way of looking at the world. That's what we seek to organize the world around. That is common to black people. It's the way the world was civilized the first time around. It is the worldview of God. The African way of looking at the world. And that's what we seek to bring black to black people and to people of African descent everywhere in the world. Organized on the basis of Utaratibu wakutizama dunia, which is another way of saying black Christian nationalism, because it is a religious worldview. It means our relationship with the spirit is fundamental and everything takes shape behind it. We'll break it down and try to make it more understandable and everything as we go along. All right? Amen.